Welcome back. We are back. Long time since we've been live. And here we are, back on the Cap and Trade show. I am your host, Texans Cap. I appreciate everybody hopping on with me. Main thing was to cover the Texans Twitter tournament. I told Pat I'd do a video acceptance speech, so we'll do that. Talk about a few other things, but no, just happy to be back. It's been a while, man. And I'm really excited to chat a little bit tonight. So if you got any questions, comments, throw them up on the board. We'll get to whatever we can tonight. But before we get started, just want to make sure everybody is, if you can, take a look, subscribe to the newsletter, capandtrade.football. It's shown huge amount of growth, especially over the past, I think, 200 days. I looked at it. It's up like 240% on membership growth. So really appreciate everybody supporting that. It's a free newsletter. There's a paid tier if you're interested in supporting that way, but it's certainly free for everybody. And it's just growing. I had a newsletter come out today about 30 under the radar free agents to keep an eye on, both for the Texans and for across the league. And so that's out. And then next week I got a really fun one. Might be a little wet blanket one, but it's an interesting one. Got a lot of data in it. It's going to be about free agency return value on free agency and how teams spend money, and what the return value is back on spending that money in free agency. So just make sure, like I said, mention it. Make sure you subscribe if you can, if you haven't already. So tonight we'll just we'll do the award speech. I told Pat I'd do it. We'll talk about the under the radar free agents, like the article that came out today. Some thoughts that we have on free agency as a whole and what to expect. Maybe a little Houston, Texas centric as well. Spin on that, and then any questions or comments that you have. Anything Texans related, NFL related, however you want to do that. So let's see here. So, forewarning, this is I swapped over streaming software earlier this year, and this is the first time using the live stream of the new software. So hopefully everything goes smooth. I should be broadcasting both on YouTube and X, formerly known as Twitter. See how this works here. So add broadcast. There, Beige is here. Always great to see him. Big supporter of the channel. So if you got any questions, comments, throw them up there. It looks like I can get to them pretty easily. And all right, so let's do the acceptance speech. So this certificate of winning is just a funny joke. I told Pat that we made this. So certificate of winning, the Texas Twitter tournament, edged out old buddy Aaron Wilson there at the end, but did win the tournament. That was fun. So I appreciate all the support with that. That was a lot of fun. I kind of was treating it like a campaign each time we had a redo the bracket. And so I was treating, like, if you elect me, I'll do this. So it was really fun, but I appreciate everybody's support. It means a lot to me to have that kind of support, that everybody voting for me. And I just hope that I can continue to fulfill that, that viewership, that loyalty, that confidence that you have in me to continue to do what I do. And it's just been a lot of fun. And as you know, the offseason is a heavy time for me. I spend a lot of time. I do a lot more writing during the offseason than I probably do during the regular season. And of course, over the cap's always super busy with the free agency when things get kicked off. But hey, I'm just super excited that y'all voted for me. It was really a lot of fun. That was about 6 days, and especially that last day with against Aaron. He called me about an hour before the vote was finished, and we were chatting. And it was fun to watch the votes. I'd check on it periodically throughout the day, and it was like 50.6 to 49.3, and it just kind of hovered back and forth. It was just so close the whole way, so it was a lot of fun. Appreciate Pat Storm for kind of putting that together, and that was a lot of fun. So let's see here. Brandon Brooks Cap 2024. There you go. Yeah. So we'll see if Pat ends up running another tournament next year or something like that. But that was a lot of fun for sure. Louis, welcome in. Thanks. Thank you for the congratulations. Yeah, it was kind of a joke fun, but it was all in good fun at the end of the day. And I think everybody had a lot of fun with it. I tried to have as much fun with it as I could. But it still means a lot, you know, that y'all would vote for me, especially with some of the folks that were in that bracket to begin with, you know, Cody Stutes and Landry and Sean trying his reverse psychology on me, and of course Aaron Wilson there at the end. So there's a lot of big names, a lot of content creators out there that deserve praise and deserve to have your attention whenever you can provide it to them. You know, the Houston 713 and In-Depth Texan, and I mean there's just a lot of names, and I'm sorry if I'm forgetting folks, but the content creation for Houston in general is just at an all-time high, it seems like. And that probably comes with the success of the teams. The Astros have obviously had a ton of success in the last 6-7 years, but the Texans kind of doing the 180 and having a lot of success this year has kind of brought more content creators back to the fold that we hadn't seen in a few years. And it's just great to see, man. There's so much out there, so much content out there beyond the mainstream media, and it's great to see because there's a lot of good opinion, a lot of informed opinion out there that is worth listening to, whether it's my newsletter, this channel, other folks, you know. So I encourage you to try to get those folks as much attention as you can. So like we did say, we did the award speech, not much of a speech, but did a little award speech, but just kind of some thoughts on free agency as a whole. You know, we can kind of split it up between just league-wide and the Houston Texans spin on it. But it's going to be a more exciting free agency than we saw last year. Last year was it's easy to say, it was pretty dull. It was a very uninspiring, very dull free agency period last year. Most of the main players that were potentially going to hit the market and have some big contracts end up being franchise tagged. Some of those players got extensions out of it or reworked deals. You know, the Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, those kind of players got reworked deals. But it was just overall, it was uninspiring. There wasn't a whole lot of big money. There was not very big main players out there. And this time around, there's a little bit more. There's more big names across the board. There's a few positions that are lacking, like cornerback is beyond like a couple of names. It's going to be a barren wasteland with cornerback. Edge has got a real top-heavy group, which a few of those players will get franchise tag, but very, very top-heavy. There's like 6-7 players that are all very good edge players, including John Grenard from the Texans. And then it's like it's a big drop-off to that next wave. And then there's positions like defensive line where there's a lot of big players out there. Linebacker, there's going to be a lot of good names out there. And I think free agency is great. It's fun for the fans. It's fun to see where players sign, how much they sign for, things like that. But from a team perspective, it's used to supplement your roster, right? It's not really meant, unless you just come across a great player. I mean, Houston's a great example when they signed Jonathan Joseph and Danielle Manning, and Jonathan Joseph ended up playing on 3 contracts here, 10 years, whatever it was. But it was a long time. And that kind of signing is just rare. Most of the time, free agency is very low return on investment. You're spending market value for players and getting probably 75% of return of that market value. So I would just say that I hesitate to see teams spend big money on free agency. The Texans fans have seen it firsthand with Jacksonville. They did make it to a conference championship one year, but they seem to go in this wave where they'll spend heavily for like 2 or 3 years in a row, top of the market spending, and then it doesn't work. They tear down the roster for 1 year, and then they're back because Shad Khan will spend a lot of money and back to spending. Teams that are having to spend like that are probably missing on their draft picks. They're not having in-house players to complete extensions with. So they're going to spend that money elsewhere, and then they end up spending it on free agency where, like we talked about, you're paying market value for probably less than stellar return. So, yeah, so that, I mean, free agency is tough. It is a crapshoot to begin with, and it's very, very difficult to get things right. Speaking with the Texans, I mean, they've got their fair share of misses when it comes to free agency, and they got a few hits along the way, and that's just the way it's going to work out. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect, and the Texans are going to sign another huge swath of free agency just due to the way that Nick Caserio has structured the contracts with 1 and 2 year deals. So it's going to continually have a big class. But, I mean, just league-wide, I think overall this is going to be a more exciting free agency period. There's more big names out there. I think teams are able to better structure their contracts to accommodate bigger free agent signings and then build in their outs to that contract. You know, like Philadelphia is one of the best teams at it, where they use a lot of void years and they can use a June 1 designation built into those void year structure. And so I think just teams as a whole have just gotten a lot better at structuring their contracts to accommodate these big free agency signings. We saw with Houston last year, they used void years first time in long time. I mean, they did it right when Caserio showed up. It was very rare, but now they're really starting to use it to move money around. It's strategic movement of money. They can budget for it because they already know where it is. So they can split and put money in 2024, 2025, however they need to fit it. And they can do it on the front end, and then they can budget around it. So I think teams like that are starting to utilize this and structure those contracts so that, A, they can build extensions off of it if the relationship works out. But if it doesn't work out, you have a growing cap, and then if you have $3 or $4 million dead money that you shifted to the next year as part of those void years, hey, that's just kind of an interest-free credit card per se, you know, and it's a small percentage of the cap when it's going to be. And I think Houston has, 5 contracts are going to void on February 19th, the day before the franchise tag window opens. And then Kymie Fairbairn, I think, is the day before league year starts. So if you pull all that money together, it's like $12.3 million in dead money that's going to be associated with those contracts. But maybe some of those players turn into extension candidates. And you already have the framework already built in with the void year. So it's good to see, you know, not only Houston try to dabble in that. It seems like it has been more of a done on a need to be done basis versus a proactive approach. So I that's one thing I'm going to be watching this year with the Texans is, yes, they have a copious amount of cap space, you know, upwards around $58 million right now. Last year when they started the league year, it was like 28 million. So it's a big difference than what fans have seen in previous years. And so I'd be curious to see if he moves away from the void years or if he continues to try to lean on those, because we know the cap is going to grow every year. We know the cap is going to grow year over year. The league's not going to allow a huge jump, but with these TV deals kicking in, it's going to be a good, strong 8, 9, 10% growth every single year with the cap going forward. And so I think Texans, league-wide, teams that utilize it will start leaning on those void years, start structuring their contracts where they can just upfront shift money to the future years and hedge their bets on it. And if the player works out, then it's there. And if it doesn't work out, then it's just dead money that they've already accounted for. So I'm excited to see how free agency goes. Larry, good to see you, buddy. Thank you. Oh, another Texas podcast. How about that? So, and we'll get to Larry's question here in a second. But yeah, I think free agency is going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. As for the Texans related and what they're going to do, still kind of sniffing around and seeing how they're going to do things. Reports out of Radio Row this week, Caserio was in Vegas, and I hear that he is just absolutely giddy. I mean, he is just super excited. Not to say he wasn't excited the past 2 off seasons, but I think he knows he's really got something here. I think he knows that, hey, we've got C.J. Stroud, the offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, Will Anderson, in place. It's Derek Stingley, Laramie Tunsil at the 4 premium positions on a roster: quarterback, left tackle, edge rusher, cornerback. Ask any player manager, that is the 4 premium positions on a roster. I think wide receivers probably maybe like 4A, 4B with cornerback. And you got Nico Collins there. So if you think about it from that aspect, Houston has foundational pieces in place for the foreseeable future at all the premium positions, all under long-term contracts, whether it's rookie or extensions. And then Nico Collins is going to his last year. So is that, I think Nick has worked hard to retool this roster, turn over this roster. There's going to be a lot more turnover roster this year. I don't think we're going to see as many re-signings. We're going to see some more fresh faces. But knowing that he's got those pieces in place, and one of them is C.J. Stroud, he can't help but know. And he just seems like it just sounds like he's just got a whole new attitude about him, and that he is just super excited, looking really forward to what he can do. So he has all those foundational pieces in place. He still has draft picks. He's got, 5 in the first 4 rounds. He's got copious amount of cap space this year. He's got open books for the next few years. And the future is just bright and looking up. And then he's got D'Amico Ryans in place. So you cobble all that together, man. It's just, I think Caserio is really, really reaping the benefits of the work of the past few years. And now he's in a position to do what he really wants to do. And I think him and D'Amico are going to work hand in hand, and they're going to be a very good duo in this offseason. I'm very curious to see what players are returned back. I've kind of put some contract projections out there with Jonathan Grenard and Dalton Schultz on capandtrade.football. That doesn't mean I think those players are going to re-sign. I think that I just like doing those contract projections. So, Dalton Schultz, I think, is probably a little more high priority for me. I'm not sure about Kaimi Fairbairn. It kind of seems 50-50. I think Cam Johnston is, I wouldn't say immortal lock, but I think is probably a decent chance that Cam Johnston comes back. And then whether they don't do an extension with Nico now, or wait till maybe over the summer, or if at the earliest it'll be the summer, maybe they do it mid-season. Maybe they just want to see that he can kind of repeat what he did this year. But beyond that, I don't, like Sheldon Rankins is a possibility, but I'm just not entirely sure they're sold on him. I think the injury concerns there is what concerns them. I'm not entirely sure Blake Cashman comes back. Singletary maybe. It depends on if you want to go with the bell cow route, or if you want to go 1A, 1B complementary type running backs, and maybe Singletary is a piece of that puzzle. But I think you're going to see a pretty big turnover with the roster again. And I think, like I said, the foundational pieces are there, and use the draft to build on that. Use free agency to supplement that. And I think that's what Houston is now in the position to do, knowing that they've got those foundation pieces in place. Use free agency to build on top of that. Use the draft to grow that into a roster that maintains year-over-year strength and doesn't need to overspend in certain areas or overextend themselves in the draft for positions of need. So that's kind of my thoughts on free agency from a high-level 30,000-foot view. It's just going to be really exciting. And there's places where the team can spend money. There's places where they probably won't spend as much money, but I think D'Amico kind of put out the initial flag of that we're going to build up the defensive line. So I think the team probably invests pretty heavily in the defensive line, whether that's bringing back John Gennard, finding another defensive tackle beyond Sheldon Rankins. I'm not entirely sure if that means top tier like Justin Matabuke out of Baltimore, or if it's finding a tier 2 defensive tackle, because there's plenty of them out there. Take a look at what I wrote up today. You'll see some names. It just depends on how, where do they value these players, what the contract valuations are versus what the market's going to be. That's always going to be the biggest kicker, is you have player valuation number and market market value, where do we meet in between those? Like I wrote up on Dalton Schultz, market value might not quite align with player value. And that's why I had such a wide variance on that contract projection. I think it was like, 8.5 APY all the way up to 12.5 APY. So that one's going to be interesting to see. And I think that kind of aligns with what Dalton Schultz said on air when he was on Radio Row with 610 about finding some common ground, middle ground on the contract. So I think that kind of makes me feel like I kind of hit the right viewpoint on that with that write-up. But the team, I mean, if they can spend, I don't know that. I'm still waiting to find out, and we're all kind of still waiting to find out if Robert Woods is back, Jimmy Ward is back. Does Nick Caserio really like spending money on wide receivers? New England didn't really like to do it they would do it sparingly, but not very often. Does that mentality carry over to here? They also will need to find a replacement for Steven Nelson, whether that's through the draft or free agency. Free agency is pretty rough when it comes to cornerbacks. So maybe have to look at the trade market, but where he spends his money, I think it's going to be probably linebacker and probably defensive tackle. May not break the bank at edge. Maybe it's a Derek Barnett comes back. Haven't heard a single word about Dylan Horton, if he's going to be able to return next year or not. But unless they're able to just get Grenard back on a good deal that's team friendly-ish, not like crazy, closer to $20 million a year, I think there's a chance Grenard's back. But I feel like there's going to be a team or two that's going to be willing to pay Grenard $18, $19, $20 million a year, and I'm just not sure Houston's wanting to match that. So we'll just kind of wait and see how it goes, but that's just kind of some overarching initial thoughts that I had on free agency. We'll definitely keep our ear to the ground and cover as much as we can on that with this channel, whether it's the newsletter or here or however we can do it. So Larry did have a question. So please explain why the Houston Texans use roster and not yet any option bonuses, pros and cons of each. So they don't use roster bonuses in the same as like lump sum roster bonuses. They use roster bonuses for per game. That's more of for injury liability purposes. So it just saves the team some cash if the player gets hurt. Almost every single veteran that has a contract with Houston will have some form of roster bonuses. It's very rare that they don't. I think Malik Collins was one that maybe squeezed by without it, but it's just a way to protect the team from cash, albeit maybe a small amount in the grand scheme of things on a $250 million roster. But if you can save $200,000 here, $300,000 there from a player getting hurt, that's what that's meant for. Option bonuses, I'm not entirely sure why the team doesn't use them. Some, like I said, like Chicago, Philadelphia uses them heavily. Los Angeles uses them. Cleveland uses them heavily, which Andrew Berry came from Philadelphia. And option bonuses are kind of like I always view them as pre-negotiated restructures, because that's how an option bonus works. It's, say there's a $15 million option bonus in year 2 of the contract and a base salary of $17 million. The way the contract is written is their base salary is $17 million, which is 15 plus 2. If they activate activate the option, which adds a year to the contract, then the bonus is worth 15 and the salary will drop from 17 down to 2. And then that 17 million prorates out up to 5 years, just like a signing bonus. A lot of teams, they want to have that already pre-scheduled and budget around that. Other teams will just keep the salary as is, and then we'll utilize that money to restructure through a common restructure option that they'll have in a contract. Like Houston, they have in all of their contracts, they have what's called an automatic conversion clause. So they can, without changing any terms of the contract, if there's one term change the contract, they have to write a new one. But for the most part, they have the right to go in there and just automatically convert a salary to a sign-in bonus without the player's approval, assuming no other terms of the contract are changed. So if they wanted to this year, they could go to Laramie and say, hey, we're going to convert $14 million of your $18 million. I can't remember what his bonus salary is off the top of my head, or his base salary is, but we'll just say for the sake of the exercise, it's $18 million. We're going to convert $16 million of that into a signing bonus. It doesn't change how he gets paid. He doesn't get that bonus up front. He's paid through his weekly or biweekly paycheck, 36 weeks over the year. But the money, the accounting is different. So bonuses, like I said, I feel like, to me, bonuses are pre-negotiated restructures. They still have, but with the option bonus, the player is usually getting that money at that time. So a lot of times the option bonus, say it's a $15 million option bonus, it may be 75% of it is paid within 90 days and the rest is paid in November or whatever it may be, or maybe broken down in 2 or 3 payments, but it's giving the player money up front. So it's good for the player, and the team already can budget around that cap change with the restructure. So that's how I view it. It's just a pre-negotiated restructure, whereas they can use a common restructure if they don't use an option bonus. And then roster bonuses, it's per game. There's also roster bonuses or lump sum. Houston doesn't really use them. Chris Olsen, previous salary cap guru for Houston with Rick Smith, he was big on the roster bonus. He would do a roster bonus in year 1 and do a smaller signing bonus to kind of change the back end dead end money. And he's kind of carried that over that mentality to Atlanta, where he's doing the same thing there. It was interesting. I think last year when I was going through free agency and entering in contracts into overthecap.com, I was going through the data and I started seeing these contracts, and I didn't even think to look at the team, and I started seeing the numbers. I was like, man, this looks like a Chris Olsen deal. This looks like a Chris Olsen deal. And sure enough, it was Atlanta, and they had a huge free agency. And it was just, it's weird that you can see those things and just know that, that's a Chris Olsen special right there. So that's the roster bonus mentality. But per gamers, not the lump sum, per gamers are a very much a staple of Nick Casario's contracts. It's just meant to have liability protection for the team. So I agree that $15 million plus is too much for John Gernard. It's tough. It seems like there's a pretty wide opinion on Gernard. I think the injury history is going to be a concern for some teams. I think him having the success that he did, and this is nothing against him when I say this, trust me, having the success that he did with Will Anderson across on the other side. So does that mean if you didn't have a Will Anderson or that type of player on the opposite side of Gernard, would he be able to have that same success on his own? I think that's going to be the biggest question for teams, is if I don't have that piece on the other side, can Gernard be a game breaker on his own without another big talent on the other side? So, and teams may have another piece in place already on the other side, and they know that maybe Gernard is that player that brings us in over the top. And so that's why I say I think there will be a team or two that are willing to spend $18, $19, $20 million a year on him. I just don't think Houston is. I think Houston would love to re-sign him at 15, 16 million tops, maybe 17. But that would kind of be my impression on Gernard. And shout out to Chris Olsen. Yeah, that's my man. I learned a lot watching his contract structures and stuff. So that was a lot of fun watching his evolution. And we can do a little history on Chris Olsen. So I think it was 2010 when I started really looking at the salary cap, and then the CBA in 2011 came down. And you kind of saw teams didn't really quite know how to manage things, how to manage those contracts with the new CBA. And it took them probably 5 or 6 years to kind of really hone in on what they need to do. And now we see teams can manage salary cap easily. And so it started out with, I think, Matt Schaub and Jonathan Joseph. They were huge signing bonuses, first low salary year one, huge signing bonus structure. That creates a lot of dead money on the back end of deals. Then Brian Cushing, his extension had an option bonus in it, which was rare for Houston. Olsen never used those. It almost seemed like kind of like a test bed kind of thing, like let's try it here and see how it works. And so he had the option bonus structure. Then around 2014, started to see a little change. Hit my mic there. Started seeing the signing bonuses come down and started seeing the invent of a year one lump sum roster bonus. And so a lump sum roster bonus doesn't prorate over the years of a contract like a signing bonus does. It prorates if it's guaranteed at signing. But so what Houston would do is they would put this language in we're going to get really nerdy here. They would put language in the contract that says the roster bonus is guaranteed for injury and cap at signing and becomes guaranteed for skill, which there's 3 pieces to a guarantee: skill, cap, and injury, SIC. So you may see me say guaranteed sick, SIC, that's what that means. So they would guarantee 2 of the 3 at signing, and then the third one would guarantee 72 hours after signing. So that was their way of getting around that roster bonus prorating out. So instead of giving a player a $20 million signing bonus and having all that dead money on the back end, they would do a $7 million roster bonus and a $13 million signing bonus. And that $13 million has a much lower prorated number across. And so it leaves less dead money on the back end. But it's still the same cash flow the first year. And it has a higher cap charge in year one. So they kind of started structuring their contracts and building around that. And then so 2014, 2015, that's when we started really seeing those kind of contracts. And that's when I kind of coined the term a hybrid contract structure. You probably have heard other media people say that. That was, you had the heavy signing bonus structure, which is like Cincinnati, Green Bay. Those teams use big signing bonus. Baltimore's the same way. Big signing bonuses. And then you have teams that were like Tampa, Oakland at the time, now Las Vegas. They would do cash model. So that was no signing bonus, a year one roster bonus, and they would have no prorated money in the contract. And so what Chris Olsen seemed like to do was he kind of took both worlds and mixed them together and came into this hybrid contract structure. So that's a little salary cap history lesson for you that you probably didn't ask for. I think knowing each team's cap person is very valuable. Yeah. Kai Harley, not Kari, but Kai Harley at New Orleans. He's a magician for sure. And we know New Orleans is constantly in the hole every single offseason. This one's probably the worst one I've seen yet, and they seem to find their way out of it, and they'll find their way out of this one. But yeah, I think it's important to know who does that for teams, and it's different across the board. Andrew Brown is the football administration director for Houston, so he runs the salary cap department, but Caserio is pretty heavy-handed in the contract negotiation and structure and stuff like that. So I'm not going to say it's completely Andrew Brown's work like Chris Olsen would do, but he's moving up that way. Andrew was he started under Chris Olsen, and he's one of the few front office people that has remained with the team through the departure of Rick Smith and Chris Olsen through the Bill O'Brien era. There was Krjovic, I can't remember his name. He was the salary cap guy that learned under Olsen, and then he left when Easterby kind of took over. And Andrew was under Krjovic, and he's just kind of worked his way up the ladder, and he's worked his way up to director. And he's over the football administration, so he handles all the contracts and stuff. But Nick's got a very, very heavy hand into the negotiation and the structure of those contracts. But yeah, Larry's point is very well noted, that it's good to know those people across the league. And, you know, Chris Olsen in Atlanta, Kai Harley in New Orleans. There's a lot of those people out there that do it very well. Andrew Berry with Cleveland did it for Philadelphia. Joe Douglas did it for Philadelphia when he was there before he went to New York, before he went to the Giants. Joe Schoen with the Giants. Douglas went to the Jets. Joe Schoen is with the Bills. He came from the Bills to the Giants. He did that same thing. So it's good to know those people. I keep up with it. A lot of people are not interested in it, but to me, I think it's pretty important. I can't remember who does it for Cincy. I have to look into that. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I could geek out on that stuff all night and probably just bore you all to death. But I really didn't have a whole lot more to cover tonight. It was more so I wanted to get my award, my certificate of winning, because I'm awesome. So proud, so happy that y'all support me. I appreciate that very much. And you know, it was fun. It's fun to be live again, man. Whew. Forgot the thrill of being live. I really enjoyed it. It's been a long time since we've gone live, and I have to do this again here and there. My schedule doesn't quite facilitate me being able to do these as much as I would love to do them, but we'll try to do another one or two, especially when free agency gets rocking and rolling. I think March 13th. But the next key date that you want to keep an eye on is February 19th. That's when, you know what? Let's put it up here. Just give me 1 second here. All right. So Houston is going to have the following players are going to void. February 19th is the date. It's the day before the franchise tag period opens. So a common date, you'll hear a lot where player contracts void, and you'll hear it happens the 23rd day before the new league year starts. That's just been a kind of a placeholder that's come into. That's just a common date structure that teams will use with voids. And it's because it's right before the franchise tag period opens. The franchise tag period always opens 22 days before the league year starts. So you got Sheldon Rankins. He's going to void out. His contract will void on that date. Dalton Schultz will void on that date. Jerry Hughes will void on that date. Kaimi won't. His is going to void the day before the league year starts. And he has no franchise tag provision on his. Steven Nelson is also going to void on the 23rd day. And Derek Barnett, who has no prorated money anyway. So all those contracts will void. So for players like, we'll use Dalton Schultz as the example. To make sure that this prorated money stays in place and then it doesn't accelerate and count as that whole number this year. If they want to keep these things in place, these years, they need to get an extension done by 3 p.m. on February 19th. Okay? If February 19th comes and goes, it doesn't mean they can't re-sign him even between February 20th in the start of the league year. It just means that this $3.3 million stays there. It's going to be that cap number on top of his new contract. So if the team does intend to extend him, it would behoove them. They can work around that 3.3 number. It's a relatively small number. But it would behoove them to get a contract done before this February 19 contract void date, so that these prorated these void years would just be replaced with new contract years, and these prorated numbers will stay in place. So that's for the Texans side of things. As fans, that's what I would be on the lookout for over the next couple weeks. If any of those players, end up getting extensions, I would probably say, if I had to guess, Schultz is probably the only one out of that list. Sheldon Rankins would probably have to take a deal that he probably wouldn't want to take. I think he can easily get another $9-10 million deal in the open market. I'm just not entirely sure Houston is there on him. I think he would probably be in that $6 to $7-8 million range valuation for Houston. But the market may say otherwise. But same thing, he's got the void year, so they need to get those contracts done before then. But I would think Dalton Schultz, out of that group of players that are going to be voiding, I think Dalton Schultz is the only one that probably has a real opportunity to be re-signed. Jerry Hughes, no. We talked about Sheldon Rankins. Steven Nelson played great this year. He played really good. Played through a lot of injury. I just have a hard time seeing him back. But I could be completely wrong, because the cornerback market is just brutal this year. And Derek Barnett, his contract voids, but there's no prorated money in there, because all that prorated money stayed with Philadelphia when they released him, and Houston claimed the contract. So that would be kind of my take, is probably just Dalton Schultz out of that group of players. If you wanted to take a look at free agency, you can go to the free agency tab here. And like I talked about with cornerback, look at this list, man. That's rough. Adoree Jackson, no thank you. Kendall Fuller, he's a solid dude. That's one guy that I would be potentially interested in. So Kendall Fuller and Stephen Gilmore. Gilmore, he's 34, so I think he's still playing at a high level. If you could get him on a discount, that would be nice. But once you drop past those two players, it gets a little rough. And so that's what I'm talking about. It's going to be really tough to find a cornerback in free agency if Steven Nelson ends up leaving. Whether it's through the draft, and there's good cornerbacks in this draft. You just got to get him in the first round, if not in the second round. It's not a deep class like the wide receiver group. And then maybe you could trade for somebody. I haven't really dove in to see what kind of trade market there is out there. Omar says Dalton can go. Hey, there's plenty of folks with that opinion, and I understand it. I mean, I see both sides of the coin. He had some drops. Blocking, like I wrote up on it on my projection, his blocking is to be desired in some cases. Some cases he will maul out, but there's times where you watch him and you're just like, what are you doing? That wasn't even an effort. So, but you would like, as much as he lines up as an inline tight end, you would like to see a little more blocking out of him. But it's a very good receiver, very good route runner, has a good rapport with C.J. Stroud, and he's very mouthy on the field, which I love. I respect the trash talk game for sure. It just depends on what his market value is going to be. What award did you win? Oh, you didn't see, it's right here. Or let me go back to the full screen so you can see it. See, that's my award right there. Certificate of winning. It's even got my name on it. Texans cap. Yeah, that's what I won. We have a lot of fun with it. It was a lot of fun. Does Casario cap philosophy allow for at least 2 UFAs? Yeah, easy. Yeah, easy. Like I said, I think he's diving a little bit more into the void year concept. But I think this year you'll see the big wave 2, wave 3 type signings like we've all seen the last couple of years with Casario. But I think we'll dump in a big name signing, maybe 2, but I think we'll see at least one big one, and I think the team can easily accommodate 2 players like that. Jair Alexander, yeah, he is. He is. I thought his was. Let's see what his contract looks like. So he's got an $8 million roster bonus due March 16th. So that's the 3rd day new league year. And then he's got balloon payments. So 14, 16, 18. I would rather just wait to see if that $8 million roster bonus is really going to force Green Bay's hand. They're going to have to make a decision by March 16th. So if they release him, oof, they have all this dead money. They may have to June 1 him. They may have to wait till the start of the league year and June 1 him so that they can accommodate that. Yeah. Whew. I certainly wouldn't want to trade for that contract. I mean, I know he's only 26, but I would have to wait for a release. Would be my take on it. That's right. That is right. Jeff from ATL Moneywise. Oh, Jeff Udick. Yeah. Let's see here. Because he came over from Detroit, but he was hurt all year. What? No, he played 13 games. He played 50% of the snaps. That would be a big time prove it contract, right? You'd have to really get him on a very low level contract and see if he can play his way back into it. I just don't know if he would fit in this scheme or not. I really don't know a whole lot about him, if he's more of a press man guy or if he would fit more into this kind of scheme. So players that void after the tag period, that serves as a pseudo no. No, it's not a pseudo no tag clause. It's in Kaimi Fairbairn's contract, he actually has language in there that says the team cannot franchise tag him. That was part of their renegotiation whenever they added the void years in the middle of the season for salary cap reasons. So no, the players that are voiding, like Schultz, Rankins, those kind of players, they can still be franchise tagged. Landry Liker doesn't care. Yeah. Landry wants this roster turned over big time. He's and I may be speaking out of turn because I'm not trying to speak on his behalf. This is just my interpretation of based on the things that he says. Seems like he is more of the, we know what we did with this roster, let's make it better by bringing in new players. Whether that's right or wrong is to be seen, and I know Cody really likes having Schultz, and I would be more so agree with Cody than I would with Landry. And I think what Cody wrote up on it on HOUfootball.com, fantastic newsletter. Make sure you subscribe to Cody if you can. It's a paywall deal, so fair warning on that. But Cody has an absolutely beautiful understanding of this team and this organization, and has wonderful insight into this team. So I would love to see Schultz back. I would be even willing to overpay a little bit for Schultz. His last contract was 6.75 base, up to 9 with incentives. He didn't meet any of those incentives. So, maybe he gets $9-10 million a year. That's fine. If it's 11 or 12, you get a little iffy. Anything beyond that, no. But I would be more so of the bring him back if you can. So, if there's got any more questions, throw them up on the board. If not, we'll call it a night. But I appreciate everybody stopping in. This was fun. I didn't anticipate this one going 50 minutes. I thought it was going to be a little bit shorter, but y'all got a history lesson on salary cap structure, so that's always fun. And so for kicks, walk me through. All right. Let's look at DK's. So he's got 2 years left. March 13th, salary guarantee. That's late for Seattle. Seattle usually does 5 days after the Super Bowl. So his salary would be guaranteed before the new at the start of the new league year on the 13th. So 21 million and change. Yeah, 21 million or 31 million. I'm sorry, not 21. 31 million over the next 2 years. So that's 15.5 APY over 2 years. That would be fantastic. The problem with for Seattle is 23 million in dead money. So they're saving 1.5. They save 13 million in cash. So I don't, for a top 60 pick. Yeah, late second rounder. I could get on board with that. But that's how that would work. They would be 23 dead for them, 15 and change per year for Houston. And if Nico gets extended, his deal is probably going to be pretty light on the front end. So it would be pretty easy to accommodate both Nico and DK Metcalf in there. I'm just not entirely sure that Seattle would want to move on from Metcalf. They're 5.2 in the hole, which that's easy because they're going to get rid of Jamal Adams this year. They'll save 6. They probably June 1 him, but they're gonna move on from. They might move on from Tyler Lockett too, but so I don't think DK is any sort of cap casualty or anything like that. But if they moved on from him and had Tyler Lockett, that would really, really hurt them. So I'd have a hard press seeing them wanting to move on from DK, but that's essentially how it would work there. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. Let me see. Let me turn this off. That's how that is. Okay. Yeah, man, this was a lot of fun. It's good to get back out there and chat with all of y'all. Been a while, like I said, it's been a while since we've gone live. I'm not sure when we'll be able to do it again, but we'll try to do one maybe right before free agency. Might have a little more intel on what Houston's doing. Might even have some new contracts before then, especially coming up on the void date with February 19th. But it's going to be fun over the next few weeks. Got Super Bowl tomorrow. Having trouble betting against KC, but I really, really, really would like to see Kyle Shanahan get his Super Bowl. Big fan of his, and I really do hope that they come through on that point. Brandon, I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate the kind words. Live stream early. I wish I could. I really wish I could do earlier. Just our family dynamic doesn't quite accommodate an earlier live stream, so we have to do these after the kids go to bed, or else my son would probably be up here sitting in my lap with us. So that's why we have to do these a little bit later. So I wish I could. If I would, I could. I'd say that. About to go back and rewatch it, man. Got any questions? Send me an email. you've got any questions that you couldn't ask during the live stream or didn't get a chance to, you can always email me, troy@overthecap.com. But other than that, it's a lot of fun. So I'll let y'all know next time we go live. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Subscribe to the newsletter for sure. That really, really helps it. We've had a huge amount of growth. Where did it go? Yeah, so I posted this up on Twitter the other day. X, I keep calling it Twitter. This is the subscription growth for Cap and Trade. This is the newsletter, and it's just boom, look at that, just huge growth the last 200 days. So super excited about that. So if you aren't subscribed, make sure you get in on that. It's free. You'll learn a lot. It's a pretty nerdy one, and I got a newsletter coming out next week that will have return value on free agency. I have a lot of data, a lot of numbers in there, so it'll be fun. And hopefully it'll kind of give you some insight into my thoughts of free agency. Like we were talking about at the beginning, where you don't get a lot of return on the value because you're paying market value for those players. And so that newsletter, that'll be a good segue into that newsletter edition coming out this week. It'll kind of give you a little more in-depth reasoning why I say that when I say that. And you'll see the amount of teams that rarely get positive return value, or value surplus, as I think I coined it in there. Value surplus on those contracts. It's just very, very difficult. Houston was in the negative, just to give you a preview. But there was more teams that found value than 2022. You can search on Cap and Trade. I did the same exercise for 2022. Just this time around, I was able to do some more filters, manipulate the data a little bit better to present it more accurately and more honest assessment. And then the linebacker position, prepare yourself, man. There was a ton of value made at linebacker this year. So hopefully Houston can find a linebacker because I don't think they're going to bring back Cashman. So they're going to need, and Perriman's, no, he's not coming back. So they need to find that Mike that can be next to Harris on the field 95% of the time. So with that, a tagline that I haven't used in a long time. With that, we will call it a night and shut it down. Everybody have a good evening. I appreciate you. Appreciate the support. Thank you for the voting on the Texas Twitter tournament. And we will have a good night and talk to you soon. Thanks.